If you're seen as a rookie in motorsport, this probably means you are still very young, and when you arrive at your first big race, you're often looking up at the established professionals around you. At the 2001 Daytona 24 Hours, however, this was the exact opposite, as one of the drivers competing for the very first time in the event was 49-year-old NASCAR legend Dale Earnhardt. So how did he get there, and how did he perform in his first and only 24-hour endurance race? At the beginning of 2001, Dale Earnhardt had properly made his mark on American racing history and was arguably looking at maybe wrapping up his NASCAR career. He took great pride in preparing his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. to follow in his footsteps, and it's pretty obvious to see that he really enjoyed racing with him in NASCAR. But the inherent nature of NASCAR means that one of them would always finish ahead of the other. So General Motors Racing Department came with an idea that would see the father and son not race against each other, but with each other. The two were offered to share a car at the 2001 Daytona 24 Hours. Dale had mentioned before he was interested in running the legendary endurance race, so they obviously agreed and quickly started a rigorous 6-day testing schedule at Sebring, where they'd get to know their co-drivers for the race, Kelly Collins and Andy Pilgrim, and get used to the car they'd be driving, the Corvette C5R. Compared to the NASCAR stock cars Dale was used to driving, the Corvette was a completely different animal. Ever since its debut in 1999, Corvette racing had developed the C5R into a proven race winner. Born in the shadow of the all-conquering Viper, the Corvette soon took over the reins as the new top American GT race car. It was powered by a massive 7-liter V8, which was bigger than an engine you'd find in a contemporary NASCAR stock car. It would race in the GTS class, and this was a time where those cars could compete for the overall lead in long endurance races. This was proven just a year prior, when the C5R finished second right behind one of the many Vipers. The open-top prototypes had a pace advantage, but were generally less reliable, so there was definitely some hope of maybe adding another Daytona win under Earnhardt's belt. Next to the car, Dale would also have to get used to the track, or at least part of it. He knew the oval like the back of his hand, but the infield layout was uncharted territory.
Well, I know the big part of it very well, but this part through the infield, I've just slept it.
Scott Pilgrim was tasked with starting the race after the car qualified 18th overall out of the massive 86-car-strong grid. Only two other GTS class cars would start ahead, the number 2 sister Corvette in P12 and an aging but still competitive Porsche 911 GT1 Evo in P10. After a hectic start, Scott Pilgrim quickly started making up ground. After an hour of running, he took the car to the pits for the first scheduled driver change. Dale, probably being the only one who was still using an old-school open-faced helmet, was ready and waiting to make his endurance racing debut. After a slow stop, where he took plenty of time to strap in, he set off, but not after stalling the car first. Proof that even the most seasoned drivers can make simple mistakes. That would be the only mistake for the foreseeable future though, as once a full course caution had been lifted, Dale set out to do what he does best. Despite having 34 wins at Daytona, they were all at the oval, not the road course layout. What was also new was racing in the wet, as not long after he got in the car, it started to rain. Dale might have done one tiny bit of wet weather driving in a NASCAR practice session a few years earlier, but that can't be compared to full-on multi-class wheel-to-wheel racing. It was only a slight drizzle though, but still, with slick tires on the damp track, Dale managed to impress as he manhandled the car around the circuit. After a single 1-hour stint, he made up for the time lost during a caution early in the race. He even got into the battle with a sister car. The very experienced Johnny O'Connell behind the wheel of the number 2 car eventually had to let Dale go. He went on record saying he found himself quicker in the infield, but once they got to the banking, Dale just stormed off. He'd driven the oval thousands of times, so he knew where the best lines were. Dale would eventually hand over the car to Collins with the number 3 car ahead of the number 2 car. Collins then proceeded to run the car dry, literally. He had to push it down the pit lane out of fuel to hand off to Pilgrim once again. By the time Dale Earnhardt Jr. was up for his first stint, it was already nighttime. He quickly got caught out by the tricky damp track and spun twice in his opening laps. Despite the trial by fire, Jr. adapted quite well to the new environment and gradually started going faster and faster while the track started to dry up again. After another quick stint by Collins, Dale Sr. was back in the car for his first nighttime racing session. A relatively clean stint followed, Dale only hampered by one broken headlight, which wasn't a problem on the well-lit oval, but did significantly reduce visibility in the infield. Judging from the lap times though, Dale didn't care about that. Not long after Dale Jr. got back in for his second stint, he had to limp the car back home after a suspected transmission failure. It ended up being a half-shaft failure, and the team lost half an hour replacing it. After Collins and Pilgrim did their best to make up for lost time, Dale was back in the car for a third and final time. Now he'd really be up for a challenge, as the track was now properly soaked. His stint while the track went to dry and then wet again was nothing short of amazing. You really couldn't tell this was his first time racing in the rain. Dale really got into a groove and even asked on the radio to do a second stint, which the team agreed to let him do as he was running a strong pace. Dale seemed to properly enjoy racing in the rain, as he was even willing to do a third stint. He didn't get to do that, but he was visibly happy when he got out the car, stating that he really enjoyed driving it. He was hooked.
It's a good race car, real good race car.
You look like a happy man, though. You've obviously had the time of your life out there.
I want to stay in there another stint. I was ready to go another one.
That was it for Dale, as his son, Collins and Pilgrim took the car home in an impressive 4th place overall finish and 2nd in class, escorting the sister car and the rest of the field over the line, as that managed to not only win its class but also the race overall, a historic victory for Corvette racing. After the race, plans were put in motion for the Earnhardts to do more road racing. Dale's post-NASCAR career was taking form, and solid plans were laid out too for a Le Mans entry under the Dale Earnhardt Inc. banner. Sadly, just 2 weeks later, Dale Earnhardt would lose his life in the Daytona 500. The 24-hour event would be the last race he ever finished. Dale's short but impressive stint in endurance racing proved that the racing world didn't just lose one of the best stock car racers, but one of the best overall race car drivers, period. As for the Corvette Dale used, perhaps he had some influence on it, as that specific car went on to finish 2nd at Le Mans back-to-back in 2001 and 2002, proving to be an essential part in Corvette's racing legacy. With the Garage 56 NASCAR stock car competing at Le Mans in 2023, one can imagine Dale would have definitely been part of the team if he was still around today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on the next one.